Welcome to the very first episode of Humans and Design, a podcast where we explore the intersection of design, technology, and humanity. I am Himanshu Chaudhary, a UX designer and an educator. I've had the privilege to mentor more than 1,000 students into their UX journeys. And today, for this episode, I'm joined by my beloved friend Sandeep Tripathi, a brilliant product designer who's worked with IBM and Kyndryl. He's also the co founder of an AI generative startup called Stas Canvas, an author, and believe it or not, a filmmaker. We are going to talk about the future of UX in 2025, common mistakes designers make in their resumes and portfolios, and not to forget, no code tools, and of course, the influx of artificial intelligence in UX design space. Let's dive in. Welcome, Sandeep Tripathi.
Hey, Manchu, thank you for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Too many things these days on my plate, but yeah, it's extremely exciting times to be alive. So things are going great.
So, my first and foremost question for you would be, what is the biggest mistake UX designers make in their resume?
That's actually such a good question. Actually, first of all, I'd like to say that because I sincerely think that the hiring structure that we have right now, specifically for designers, because designers are mostly needed in the tech sector. I know other companies are also getting into UX design and all that sort of stuff, and that's understandable. But if you look at the origins of how UX design came as a principle, at least in the last 10 years or so, the main influx started after iPhones and Androids became a very common things, and there were so many apps that had to be designed and all that sort of stuff, and that kind of gave rise to the golden age of UX design, as we say, right? The 2010s, that sort of time.
Right.
I think the entire recruitment sector that is there, the hiring process that is there at the moment, I kind of find it to be a lot more broken than normal at this moment.
Okay.
That's my take on it. Resume obviously is one part of it, which I think designers can obviously do something about it so that it is not working against them. Then there is the portfolio section as well.
Yes, yes.
But if you look at, I like to draw some sort of a parallel between another area inside the industry, which is about developers.
Okay.
I don't know how much you know about this, but when a developer is hired, the interview goes through rounds. In the first one, they ask them a few questions. And it's not exactly like walk me through your career and stuff like that. They would ask them like, write code about this. Okay.
Yes.
For example, if you are hiring a AI engineer, you would ask them like write lines of Python and show me how you call an LLM. Things like that.
Okay.
Okay. This is exactly how they are seeing that if they're able to do that or not. And that has been like a standard since years.
And this is the same case for, like, let's say, a front-end developer.
Yeah, of course. Any developer, they try to see what their skills are. Obviously, anybody can write anything on the resume, right? But when it comes to practically getting things done, they exactly want to see how it is. Earlier, it used to happen in person. Now, these days, mostly on calls. But they exactly try to see what this man does or what this woman does. If there is something that could be done in 5 lines of code, if this person is using that much or is using more, because it takes a lot more resources when it comes to the compute of things. So those are the things that we try to understand.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I think that's not exactly how designers are being recruited, at least from what I've seen in this country and maybe outside also. But that's how things don't really work. And I have a severe issue with this because what happens is you ask designers to create a beautiful portfolio. Based on that, you filter them out.
Yes, that is mostly the case. Yes.
Pretty much. Yeah. Or maybe a resume. I think resume still has a lower, priority when it comes
portfolio
to
is the primary, the judgmental criteria, basically.
Exactly. And I can tell you like 100 flaws because of that sort of how I perceive it, because as you introduced me in the beginning, I'm into filmmaking as well. I'm co-founder of this company called Stas Canvas. We are trying to reimagine filmmaking with the help of technology, things like AI and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
We'll talk about that. But what I'm exactly trying to say is, in the world of filmmaking, if there is a VFX artist or something, we look at their portfolios.
Okay.
Because if a VFX artist comes to me and asks for a job or something like that, I cannot ask him to do something right there. Just like a developer, I asked him, like, okay, write a few lines of code and show me how you will do this. I cannot ask a VFX artist to exactly do that. It's like, there's like a car crash scene. Can you do that for me right now? And dude would be like, dude, that takes weeks for me. So that obviously doesn't happen. So for graphic designers, for illustrators, for VFX artists, or for writers, and many other creative disciplines that we have, we can see that a portfolio actually helps them a lot. Any creative field. This is where the twist begins, because UX design or product design is not entirely a creative career. It has a lot of scientific aspects to it as well. You do a lot of user research. You try to understand the user psychology. You also try to understand the technical constraints that you have, like what you can do and cannot do. So you need to have a technical understanding too. You need to have an understanding of psychology, as I just said, and some creative aspects too, because problem solving cannot happen without creativity. Right. So this is where I would like to draw some sort of a parallels that portfolio may help, but it is not one magic pill that solves everything. Because when you ask a UX designer to create a wonderful case study, what you're asking that person to do is to create a great presentation that hooks the person. When you look at it, when you read it, you're like, okay, this is awesome. So the person may probably be, very good with the blogging capabilities or journalistic capabilities, because journalists are the ones who write really beautiful stories, right?
Yes.
They hook you with that sort of thing. Or novelists, right?
Correct.
They write such a story that you just get addicted to it.
Correct.
And this is what you're expecting from a UX designer to do when they write a case study, right? You're expecting them to be a novelist. You're expecting them to be a journalist so that the story is enticing. Right?
Very interesting.
Or you just skim through the entire thing.
Yes.
And when people skim through the entire thing, what they do is they just look at the screenshots, how beautiful they are. Not focusing on the usability or the UX aspect, but focused on the beauty aspect of it.
Yes.
And that's how they make a decision. Right?
Yes.
And this is where I see portfolios failing the UX designers, because there are many of us, like I have comprehensive experience in enterprise UX.
Yeah.
Now, enterprise UX comes with NDAs, and a lot of stuff that we do, that is generally a business preparing a product for another business.
Correct.
Right? It's not for consumers. It's not something that people generally get to see. Right? Now, how am I going to show you this thing? It's obviously under an NDA. I can obviously, change numbers and change the names and all that sort of stuff, create something hypothetical that is very similar to what I did, but I cannot show you exactly the same thing, right? Because those are covered under many laws, right? You cannot just start messing with all those sort of things, because those are the intellectual property that the company has, right? This is where the portfolio will fail me, because if I create a portfolio where I don't show these things, what I'll do is I'll create a hypothetical scenario in my head, and I'll try to design that and I'll try to show it, which is not a real world scenario. I'll probably go and say that, let me redesign YouTube, let me redesign Netflix, without having any context about, what the business goals are, without having any context about who the users are. I'm just redesigning it from my perspective, based on some of my experiences, or maybe I'll talk with a couple of my friends or things like that, or maybe I'll try to grasp something from the internet, and then I'll come up with something hypothetical story.
Yes.
Not a real world thing, right?
Right.
This is where the portfolio failed me. I would suggest in this sort of scenario, look at designers like developers. When you are hiring them, instead of asking them for a resume, I mean, sure, go ahead, ask for a resume. And I'll tell you where people are making so many mistakes based on that too. But the main thing is, along with the resume, ask them like 5 questions. If it is a mid-level UX designer or a senior level UX designer, don't ask them simple questions like what is Gestalt principles or what's Fitts law, because anybody can Google that up, right?
Correct.
Ask them real questions from the industry, something that nobody can answer without having an experience in this, or without having empathy in their brains, or without having a design thinking sort of an approach towards things, right? If they do that sort of a thing, if they have that sort of an approach towards things, they will answer the question in the way that you want them to, right? Or maybe they can answer in a different way, and that may not be wrong, but that may also be something that you don't expect. So this is a good way of filtering them.
Okay.
And so once you have filtered them and you call them for an interview, give them whiteboarding exercises so that you can exactly get to know if this person fits in into our environment or not.
Okay.
If this person is the right cultural fit, or if this person is exactly getting the way he's supposed to get, or whatever you were expecting. I think that does a far more justice to the role instead of a portfolio sort of a thing, because the portfolio case study may or may not be related to what you are exactly expecting that person to do. But a whiteboarding exercise, which is pretty much similar to what you are expecting that person to do, that will give you a better picture or a better understanding. Unfortunately, I don't see any employee doing that, which is kind of a sad state of affairs, because all those UX designers who are not great journalists or novelists or marketers of sort, who cannot write a beautiful story, or who are not very good with crafting beautiful interfaces like the ones which go on Dribble.
Correct.
Those people are left out. And then we forget that this is all about usability and user experience and not pretty interfaces, right? So this is where I think the entire recruitment industry is kind of, messed up when it approaches people like us.
Okay. Very interesting point there, Sandeep. And do you think that this practice is only been around in India, or is it like the practice from around the world? Do you have any idea about that?
Well, as far as I talk with people who are a couple of people that I know who work abroad as well, people have come up with many things. There is this shady practice also of take-home assignments. I'm sure you know about this.
Shady practice.
Yeah, it's a shady practice. I would always call it a shady practice, because you would never hire a developer by saying that, okay, thank you for coming for an interview. This is your take-home assignment. Create entire Netflix and come back to me in 3 days. You will never expect that, right?
Yes.
How many times have you expected this to happen to a developer, right? That's just not realistically possible.
Okay.
So companies are going to ask you to create some sort of, an entire A to Z sort of a thing in a hypothetical scenario without any, context, without any information, without any understanding of the user or the business goals.
Right.
It's kind of like a one-page sheet which gives you a mini PRD of sorts. And based on that, you have to come up with an entire end-to-end solution. Sometimes what they're trying to do is trying to extract free work out of you. There have been incidents.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Even myself.
Yeah, you face that, right? So I've seen many of the companies who try to do that, especially, startups and agencies, some of them.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the reason why I call this a shady practice. A lot of people say that what's wrong with this? I mean, you're getting some practice, and if you are a freelancer, then it helps you in some way. Or if you are a newcomer in the industry, that helps you even more. I'm like, sure. I mean, practice always helps, right? But this sort of a thing actually doesn't help, because you're going to pour in all your efforts and strengths and heart and everything into this, maybe for about a week or something like this. And once you give it to them, they never had the intention to hire you in the first place. Right. So that becomes a demotivating sort of a situation for many people. So I would recommend designers to stay away from the roles like this, because when a company indulges in these sort of practices, it doesn't really give a very positive image of that company itself when it comes to the culture. So I'm not sure if you're going to thrive in that company. So that's my take on these sort of things.
Very big red flag.
Yeah, it's a definitely big red flag.
All right. Okay. So let's say you talked about the recruitment process of UX designers being very different, right? Let's say there are some companies or employers who are practicing this, who are actually practicing this.
Yeah.
And let's say the whole industry changed. Let's say everything went positive, and everybody now, involved the whiteboarding exercises and all these criteria you mentioned into the hiring process of a UX designer. Then what? Like, let's say we have sorted it out. So this again comes back to the point of applying to the job.
Yeah.
And by applying to the job, you need to have to upload a resume.
Right.
So my point comes again to the resume. Like, what is the biggest mistake UX designers make in in their resumes, because there's one more point here, is the ATS.
Yes.
Automated tracking system.
Yeah,
applicant tracking system, right?
Yeah.
So how do we get past that? How do we create or craft a resume that can actually filter that ATS out and reach real humans?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I have crazy ideas around this, really crazy ideas. I don't know how far those are realistic, but one of the major issues that I have seen, and I've talked with real recruiters on this,
Okay.
they have confirmed this hypothesis. I think many have probably read on LinkedIn too, and maybe you have also read this sort of thing on LinkedIn. People use Figma to create the resumes. Now, what happens is, like, for a person who is not a designer, they probably don't know about Figma. So they will go to something like Google Docs or Microsoft Word or things like this, and they will create the resume over there, which is very simple text formatted document, very boring, probably a single column sort of a thing.
Yeah.
Right. Designers don't do that. They are very clear about the typography that they're going to be using in there, the spacing of everything, and
the white spacing, the hierarchy,
every single thing. I've seen people using auto layout in Figma resumes. I have literally seen that thing happen also. So there are a lot of people do that. What happens is, Figma is not a resume tool. This is what everybody forgets. What happens, and I know from the surface, it probably looks like it is, kind of it is, because you download a PDF after that, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately you have to give a PDF.
Yeah.
That's it, right? Yeah, that's where the story goes weird, because what happens is, like, the way Figma PDFs are formatted, they look to you if you see from a human perspective, it looks clear.
Okay.
But from a machine perspective, it is not. What happens is, when you have a DOC file, like the Word document file or Google Docs file, they have metadata and a set of formatting that they usually go through.
Okay.
Which is very easy to read for, machines.
Okay.
ATS, as you said. Figma somehow creates shapes. It's a vector tool. Let's not forget that.
Okay.
It does not create letters. It creates shapes. Shapes are probably not the very best thing for ATS, because that's expecting letters. And this is where the ATS is unable to read a lot of things that are there on Figma. Sometimes it will just see weird shapes. That's it.
Oh my God,
it's kind of like, how to read English, right?
Yeah.
If I write this, THIS, you can read it.
Yeah, correct.
But if I write this in Mandarin script, you won't be able to read it. That's exactly what we are doing. We're using Figma and we are throwing it at ATS. It's like, okay, I don't get this, reject. And that's exactly where I believe a lot of people are getting rejected. Maybe they're using the right keywords that they're supposed to. Maybe they have the right experience. Everything checks out. It looks beautiful to the human eye.
Yeah.
To ATS, it doesn't. And this is where I've spoken with recruiters who have said this also, that, a lot of times things like this come, and later on we also wonder why this happens. One of these people who used to be a designer before confirmed this later on, this hypothesis, that this is exactly what is happening. Figma is throwing out things which ATS doesn't really get. I think this is a severe problem. So I would recommend at this sort of stage, is like, keep your resume as boring as possible. Use Microsoft Word, use a single column format if you have to.
Okay.
Don't even go for a 2-column format. I mean, sure. I mean, a lot of these ATS are able to understand 2-column formats these days. And there's like this sort of a weird thing that you have to have a 1-page resume. Yeah, I don't really buy that logic much either.
Okay.
You can have like a 2-page resume if you want to. If you need space, that's fine, because you must have done a lot of work which you want to talk about, right?
Yeah.
So that's completely okay. Have that 2-page resume. Use it like in a standard typography and all that sort of stuff. Make it clear to the human eye so that people can read it as well. But keep it boring enough so that ATS can at least get it. That's more important than anything else, because if the ATS rejects you, you're never getting any interview or anything, all of that stuff. So you have already lost the battle before it starts, right? So that's one major crisis that I'd like to point out, because other things like, how to rightly use keywords and how to tailor a resume, I'm sure there are many HR professionals who are talking about it.
Yeah, correct, Sandeep. This is big, actually. You telling me that do not design or craft your resumes using Figma.
Yeah.
This is actually big, because Uh, I don't know. I have not done research, but I'm pretty sure, being a designer, that most of the designers out there craft their resumes on Figma.
Correct.
And that is actually the poisonous pill they're taking.
Kind of. I didn't even know, but because I'm not a recruiter, I've not really done things like that. But I do know people who do that, and they are the ones who actually told me this, and that was an eye opener for me as well, because I didn't even think this thing this deeply.
Wow, wow, wow. Well, thank you for showcasing some bright light over the resume thing, the Figma thing. This is actually going to help a lot of people out there.
I hope so. Really. Try and have a beautiful portfolio, maybe, but keep the resume boring, because that's really not helping you in this sort of case.
Okay. So my next question for you, Sandeep, will be artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
You see, we are seeing a lot of hype around, these days about artificial intelligence is going to take over to the world, is going to take your jobs away. What is your thought process? What is your take on artificial intelligence being introduced in the field of design? Like, we are seeing a lot of AI related tools nowadays, where you can just go, feed in a prompt, and you can get the UIs of the whole products.
Yes.
Right. So there's like Galileo, there's like UI Wizard, or UI Zard, sorry, not UI Wizard, it's UI Zard, right?
Yeah.
And there's also Figma AI.
Yes.
So what is your take? Like, what do you think? Is it going to take jobs?
There's like this fear that I get to see in a lot of people when it comes to generative AI in specific. Since ChatGPT came into the picture, I think this got heightened, and then after that, everybody started to just follow this sort of a trend and started introducing AI into pretty much everywhere.
Right.
And that has kind of changed everything. As you are saying, that there's a fear that jobs are going to go away, but it's not just the design industry. First of all, let me just highlight that very well.
Right.
If you think the design industry is under threat, I think the developer industry is way more into threat, because they have things like Vercel and Cursor AI and things like that, where you can just simply type a prompt and it will write the code for you. Even ChatGPT can write the code for you.
Okay.
So what it exactly happens is that a lot of developers are scared, especially with people coming up with claims like, Google CEO recently said that more than 25% of Google is now written by AI. Similarly, somebody probably said GitHub's half of the code is now written by AI, which is Copilot, I think, GitHub's inbuilt AI mechanism that they have.
Okay.
Now, 25% is still a normal number, right? I'm not even afraid if it actually converts into 90%. And I'll tell you why. And then I'll extend into design and other areas also.
Okay.
Because what these tools do when it comes to generative AI is they have been trained on sets of data, things that have happened in the past.
Correct.
They are just trained on that. And basis that information and that training and that patterns that they come up with, they, create all these interfaces or generate designs or generate images and all that sort of stuff. And then they come up with that sort of a solution, which you get to see with Figma design and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
Same is with the developer community. What happens in these sort of situation is when it comes to, writing good code, right? If something can be done in 5 lines of code, then why use 10 lines? Because that's going to take more resources, right?
Yes.
This is something that a human knows way better than a generative AI system.
Right.
So what exactly happens is, like, for example, if you are a developer and you have an idea clearly in your mind, you're not going to write code now. You're going to ask probably ChatGPT or Claude or something like that. That will write you the code. There's a good chance it may not be perfect code, and you will make tweaks into that.
Okay.
For that, you need to understand exactly how that thing works, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, it may be possible that 90% of the code was generated by GPT and only 10% was done by you.
Okay.
But that 10% is what is needed. Without that 10%, that 90% is 0%. Because that is not workable code in a lot of cases where complex scenarios come into the picture. Obviously, if you're going to go and ask ChatGPT to write a hello world, it's going to do it very easily.
Yes.
If you're going to go and ask Figma AI to design a simple app which has been done like a million times before, Figma will probably do a good job and it will come up with something.
Right.
The real deal is about the human intervention that goes into it. For developers, for designers, for pretty much everyone. And I can say this with confidence because, it's not just with design. AI is coming everywhere and it's actually going to help. People are not getting that yet, but it's going to help. And I'll give you two contexts based on that.
Okay.
Back in the 80s, there was this term called computerization.
Yes.
I mean, you and I were not there, but I've read about archives and everything. And
Absolutely.
I know people used to say that things are getting computerized these days. If you don't know how to use a computer, you're going to be like, behind in life and all that sort of stuff. We don't use that term anymore. Computers are everywhere.
Yeah.
And they were worried that computers will take human jobs. Do you think computer took away human jobs or generated more human jobs?
I think they have generated a lot.
Correct?
Yes.
That is what we are at this sort of a moment. We are at a turn sort of a thing. With generative AI, it's actually helping us do a lot of things. Imagine yourself, you're a designer, me too. I will come up with an amazing app idea. I can create Figma designs, and now I can use AI to convert that into a functioning app. This is something I couldn't do before.
Right.
Provided I know how to code, which is very rare. I see in designers, they know how to code. But if you don't know, you can still create a real app. And no code has been a big help in this sort of a case. And that is what I talked about in 2022, I wrote this book called Build with No Code, which I've talked about a lot of times here and there in media as well and all the places, because I genuinely believe people who really cannot code can still create something or the other, a real production ready app or a website or something like that.
Right.
And AI has made it better, actually. It's not difficult. It's not complicated. It's actually putting us in a position where we have way more power over creating something in an end-to-end process that we did not have before. So it's really not destroying anything. If you think about it, it's actually helping you. Another example, I'll just give you how this is impacting everywhere. Initially, the beginning of my life, I always wanted to make movies and stuff.
Okay, yes.
As you have also mentioned, like I'm into filmmaking these days. Actually,
Right.
I've been into filmmaking for a very long period of time now. I used to create content for YouTube, which is somewhat of filmmaking. And then I had this sort of a thing, like I used to watch a lot of music videos and I'd like, I want to do this one day, right? But then to do a music video, I need a real music artist, right? They would be coming up with the music and then I would be going ahead and suggesting what my idea is. I need a crew, I need a camera set, I need every sort of thing. I need to probably, travel to a lot of places to take those sort of shots with the musicians also being in that shot maybe and things like that, because that's how music videos are made.
Right.
What I did is as the first project that we did in my company, Stas Canvas, we created an AI generated singer. Her name is Maya.
Yeah.
You can check it out on YouTube.
Yes.
She sings songs, right? The song is generated using AI. She is generated using AI. Couple of open source tools were used in AI, and we generated this persona using open source tool, and then we trained a model based on that. And then we started to create this entire theme around it. I then further took it a step further. When the song was ready, we created an entire music video while just using AI. We used a couple of open source tools like Flux and everything, and a couple of paid ones, obviously the cloud hosted one because of my poor GPU. But the entire music video, now we have 2 music videos.
Okay.
The first music video was so successful that it has been covered by major media, including Doordarshan and everybody. They have talked about it. Right. The second music video was also, it just released 2 days ago and it's doing fairly well as far as my expectation is, right? Maybe it will become something, but I'm not entirely sure about it.
Right.
The truth is, without AI, I wouldn't have been anywhere with this, right? My dream of creating a music video would still be a dream. Right now, it's a reality. And now with Stas Canvas, the way we are trying to see how filmmaking is going to be like in the future, we are assuming that we would be creating anime, we would be creating short movies and maybe long movies. There are dedicated streaming platforms now for AI generated movies.
Oh.
And I'm not entirely sure about this. Maybe it's a far-fetched shot that I'm making right now. But over a period of time, maybe Netflix and everybody will also have a specific section for, AI generated movies.
Interesting.
Think about it. Like once upon a time, animated movies were not taken seriously, right? They were just out of nowhere.
Yes.
And now animated movies are real movies. Like Pixar was such a successful company that got Steve Jobs back into the map, right? When he had left Apple and all that sort of stuff. So I believe strongly that AI is actually helping us way more than damaging. All we need to do is we need to evolve. Especially from the designer standpoint, I believe with Figma AI and things like that, just imagine, now you can focus more on the user research side, right? There also you can use AI. You can probably take a lot of data from a lot of places. Maybe there are a lot of articles written about it. Maybe there is a lot of raw data around it. Maybe you can, if you're working inside a company and you can ask them to give you user data on the basis of it, you can take all that data, you can give it to ChatGPT, ask ChatGPT to make sense out of it and come up with some sort of conclusion. Like, what do you exactly understand? You did that in the past too, I'm sure, with various surveying methods and user interviews and all that sort of stuff. Wonderful. But now you have access to like huge amount of data, which ChatGPT can comprehend and make sense of in a matter of minutes and give you some sort of a conclusion, which you can then act on, which was probably not possible before, right? Now, with this insights that you have, you can probably create like, a mind map and information architecture, things like that. And ultimately, when it comes to creating the UI, what you used to previously do is you would start with the rough sketch and all that sort of stuff, and then you would probably convert that into a hi-fi prototype.
Correct. Yes.
That entire thing can be prompted now, right? After prompted, you can obviously make some tweaks to make it look the way you want it to be.
Yeah, maybe align with the design systems and
yes, absolutely.
brand language.
So from the perspective that I'm actually looking at this is actually helping the designers instead of, taking away their jobs, because it's making them way more efficient. The things that used to take them hours before may not take that much, which obviously helps in a way. But I do understand that this may be also another perspective that companies may have, that I can actually get this thing done with one designer plus AI instead of having three designers and no AI. Maybe that is also a reality that we might have to face. But as far as I understand, as far as we can truly utilize generative AI, as long as we understand how prompting works, how an AI model works, what are some particular use cases where what AI helps you the best. If we can understand that and leverage that in that sort of a way, I believe that will help us way more than damage us. And that's just the design part.
Yeah.
When it comes to end-to-end process of creation of products like apps, AI plus no code is like magic there, right? You can obviously go to tools and you can prompt your way. And then even if you have like a basic understanding of how React works or Python works and things like that, you can get a lot of things done, which was just impossible before, unless and until you were proficient with coding and programming and you knew everything from, authentication to databases to hosting to cloud services like AWS and stuff. Yeah. All of that stuff has now become so easy with no code and AI.
I'll come to this point.
Yeah.
This is a very, very good point you made about the no code stuff.
Yeah.
But before jumping into that, I would like to add one thing here. Like you mentioned that AI is not going to kill jobs, probably, but designers who utilizes AI and have a skill set with AI will be preferred.
Yeah, definitely. The usage of AI is rising at like an unprecedented rate that we are getting to see, right? Especially generative AI, because people think that it's making their work easier.
Right.
And it obviously it is making. And in 2025, people are assuming that this is going to be the year when AI agents are going to take up the game, right? A lot of people are talking about it these days. And if we can utilize these AI agents, because ChatGPT, OpenAI has also started getting into this picture in a very good way. We have some no-code tools as well, like Langflow and Flowwise. I'm sure a lot of designers won't know about this, but I would recommend them to go and look up these tools, because these are not coding platforms. These are where you can use no-code, node-based structure, and you can create very comprehensive, chatbots. Something that is suited to you, something that is just for your use case, and you can make yourself way more efficient than you were before. So these are the things that I generally want to talk about, because the more you know about these tools, the better the work you're being able to do, the more efficient that you can become. It makes it easier for you to actually carve a place for you within the industry, rather than following the conventional processes that used to be before. So that's what I'm trying to drive, the attention of designers towards, instead of, people being afraid that this is going to come up and this is going to take away our jobs. That's far from happening.
That's far from happening. So for beginner designers out there who are just starting up, what can you suggest if I bifurcate this into UX and UI, how they can utilize AI into their good faith in UX and in UI? A few pointers.
2 pointers I'll just give, which I was also talking about right now. The research part is going to become extremely easy. The UX part, especially where you spoke about.
Yeah.
The research part is going to be extremely easy because, I mean, sure, I mean, nothing really is going to change the way where you go and you talk with the customer, because we've done all that sort of things,
Yeah.
right? We talk with the users, we try to understand what the requirement is.
Correct.
Now also you can do that. You can have like a 1 hour session with them, or longer.
Yeah.
And then you can ask Microsoft Copilot to sum it up for you.
Yes.
Research is getting easier, right? I mean,
Yes.
you did a user interview, but AI now helped you. So you use some
By
part of the conventional
analyzing
process.
the research.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So you use the conventional process. You can
Yes.
do user surveys too, right? Questionnaires and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Ask AI to make sense out of it. So you just merge two things, right?
And probably create the questionnaire for you.
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, that's also a very good way of looking at it. I mean, if you have some sort of a context and user data and you want like some sort of a pain points to be identified, I think AI can help you there as well.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, as far as I see it, it really helps you from the UX side. And I'm actually optimistic about this because I'm assuming that a lot of other companies are going to create specific models for UX, which has not happened yet.
Yeah.
You will get to see Code Llama and Code Gemma and things like that,
Yes.
which are specifically for coders. They have been trained on code. They're not performing extremely well these days, but still there are specific large language models built for coders. I think there would be specific large language models built for designers very soon. Maybe somebody will come up with it, or maybe you can do something about it. I don't know. But hopefully if companies come up with things like that, it would make the research part way easier. And the entire crux of the matter has always been about making a product that is intuitive for the users, right? If that goal is being achieved with this, then this is obviously doing a fantastic job, right? So the UX part is where this gets into it.
Correct.
UI part, obviously, you have summarized it very well. There are so many platforms where you can prompt your way out.
Right.
I think with prompting the things, you can do rapid iterative prototyping in a very quick way, in a very fast way. Previously, you used to do that, but obviously that used to take a lot of time, right? With the lo-fi also, it would take a lot of time or something like that. Right now, you can probably come up with the lo-fi stuff, like sketch it out on an iPad or a paper, and then you can ask a tool to convert it into an hi-fi sort of a thing. So that is also possible.
Correct.
And then you can also ask them to come up with ideas. You're like, okay, I want to see how this looks like when I use a search engine. So you just prompt it out and see how it looks like, if it makes sense or not. Get a usability testing done, some sort of a session to see what users think about. Create another interface, because now it's becoming extremely easy. With multiple interfaces, you can do an A/B testing and you can exactly understand which one is exactly working. So you see, AI is actually helping you. It's not exactly going against you at this sort of a stage. Right. And this is the optimistic future that I'm looking at when it comes to designers. So literally, there's absolutely nothing to be worried about, like AI is coming into the picture. In fact, people are supposed to be excited that they are going to become like way more efficient than before.
Like you mentioned in the UI, there's like Galileo, UIZard, and of course the Figma AI. There's also a AI-based product coming out of India called Figure.
I've tried that.
Figure Identity, right?
Yes.
You can create a whole design system.
Yes.
Using that tool.
Correct.
In matter of seconds. So I am very optimistic about this. So should all the rest of the people, right?
Right.
One piece of advice from you for the teachers who are discouraging the use of AI amongst students in their projects, in their college projects.
That's I really have seen this sort of thing overall throughout the industry. There has always been a significant gap between the world of academia and the industry. This has kind of been flabbergasting to me, honestly. It's not something that I really get it much, because the work of academics or education is to create professionals who can work in the industry.
Right.
But then you get to see that there are people who are completing their BTech, then they join Infosys, and then Infosys says that you need to undergo this 1-year training at our company. After that, you're going to do a real project. If Infosys is giving you that 1 year project, then what was that 4 years of BTech about? Right? It's actually a very simple question over here. If that is exactly happened, obviously somewhere something is lacking. Whatever I speak from, I'm speaking from an industrial standpoint because I've never been into academia a lot. So I'm not entirely sure if AI is being discouraged or not, because I did a boot camp a couple of years ago. Not going to say which one that was. It's easy to actually figure out from my LinkedIn profile, but yeah, I'm not going to talk about that specifically. I had a word with the person at that point who was talking about it. And they were like, whenever you are studying some numbers, if out of 5 users, 3 users are saying something, it's fair enough. You should go ahead with that. And I was like, how about utilizing big data? Okay. How about using thousands or hundreds of thousands of data? And then you can see exactly what the users exactly do. And based on that, you take a decision instead of, whatever they are saying or whatever you did in that sort of case. So they were not very psyched about that. They were like, big data is not going to probably work and things like that. I did not believe that much because I see so much of impact that data has on this stage, at least in the field of advertising, in the field of marketing, all that sort of stuff. I mean, companies are collecting data every single point that they can, right? Like hundreds of data points are created for a single user, right? Right. Why is that happening? Obviously, it helps decision making in some way. Correct. If it really does, why not UX professionals also use big data for this? This is something that really, I'm worried about also, like how this exactly works. Because when you discourage people from using things like AI in their projects and things like that, they get into that sort of a sphere that this is wrong. We should not use this. Yeah. And then they come into the industry where something else is expected out of them. Absolutely. And they're like, no, we are not going to do that. And that's where a huge clash of opinions happen. Yes. And they lose out on opportunities. Yes. Yes. So, like always, I would say embrace new technologies. Crypto was a new thing probably 10 years ago. People were skeptic. Yes. Now a lot of people are not. Everybody has some or the other crypto investment happening somewhere or the other, right? Smartphones were something that people did not like in the beginning, probably, but it caught up. Computers were something that people were scared of. Internet was something that people were scared of. Right. Everything caught up, right? Right. Generative AI has already caught up. Yes. And it's making strides in ways that we couldn't even imagine about. Correct. I mean, I literally created a music video using that. Yeah. And it looks so realistic, man. I mean, even I could not believe that this is how generative AI can do, right? So AI is going to have its impact. And believe it or not, even before generative AI, Google and tools like this used to use AI in the background. Machine learning was always there. In search, in other tools, YouTube algorithm uses that. Netflix uses that to recommend you the right movies so that you can watch. Right? Right. So all of that was always there. Yeah. Right now, there is an opportunity that you can use that industrial grade sort of, tools that are out there to make your work better. So I would recommend that people should make the best out of it, not replace something, but complement their existing skill sets along with this. Being scared of it or being in a state of denial is always going to put you into a backseat, which will take away opportunities from you in the worst case situation. Right. So that would be my take on it, but still I'm open to ideas what academics have to say and why they are against it. Yeah. Right. If there is something that I can exactly understand and understand their perspective in particular, yes, that would be something that I would be excited to do. Fair enough. Maybe not 100% of teachers out there are discouraging it, but yes, there are some. Okay. But yeah, good piece of advice. And talking about embracing new technology like artificial intelligence, what is your take on no code? Like, should UI designers, UX designers who are conventionally using Figma as their go-to tool for designing stuff, should they be exploring no code tools like Webflow and Framer to design and develop websites and other products? Yeah. I would say that. I would say that that's actually a good way of looking at things, because it actually helps freelancers a lot,
Okay.
because they can package their services like end to end process. As I said before, with AI also, in a way, if you think about it, AI is actually helping no code, right?
Yes.
Because you don't have to write code now. You just need to
Right.
have a functional understanding till a certain degree. And after that, you can craft every sort of a thing in a very wonderful way.
Right.
So things like Webflow or Framer or Bubble or Adalo and Bravo, these are the ones that I've at least used. I also wrote a book on no code, as I said,
Yes.
back in 2022. So I strongly believe that no code is not only something that can help you deliver end to end process, but this can actually become an entry for you into understanding coding as well.
Yes.
Because the overarching structure and everything remains same.
Right.
If you use Webflow, you will get to understand the kind of things that they use in their frames and everything like
Yes.
that. It is very similar to how you would be writing code in HTML and stuff like that. So
Correct.
that gives you a very good visual centered approach towards understanding these things.
Correct. Right.
And I strongly believe it would help you understand code way faster than approaching coding directly. And that obviously helps you, because
Yes.
once you understand coding, not asking designers to become engineers, obviously front end developers are there already for that sort of a work, but the more you understand, the more you get to know what front end developers go through and how they work. It will make your design process easier, because you will be able to craft interfaces that actually is possible in a particular scenario. That can only happen when you understand what the other person is doing.
Right.
Similarly, I also recommend front-end developers to know a little bit more about UX as well, because at a lot of times they come up with solutions.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, you just click on this, and that's done, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, sure, it's done because you created it. You know how it works,
Yes.
right? The user doesn't, right? We are thinking from that perspective.
Right.
So it obviously helps in that sort of a way. And this is where I think no code can actually help designers in a huge way.
If you ask me, personally, I feel for beginners
Yeah.
who are trying to get into this field, who doesn't know how code works,
Yeah.
how programming works, right? I think for them, they should give these tools a try at least, just to craft, websites, because they will then get to know how code works.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And if they know how code works, then of course they are going to do wonderful jobs out there for the the developers, and of course the handoffs will become easier, right?
Absolutely. It's a collaboration process, right? The entire thing. We cannot exist as like designers, just designers who are
Correct.
focused on one aspect of it, right?
Correct.
We have to collaborate with PMs because they have a business goal that they have to achieve.
Right.
There are the developers too who know what they can exactly do in a particular sprint. I mean, obviously they cannot go beyond that too. So you need to understand that sort of a constraint so that the target is achieved within that sprint, because nobody likes like a Jira board that is filled up with tasks and stories.
With stories, yes.
That's not something that anybody likes.
That's not a good side to have.
Yeah, it's not a good side to have from every perspective. So that's where I believe no code gives you a stepping stone towards that.
Okay. Fair enough. Thanks for making these points. Thanks for answering all these questions.
Awesome, Himanshu. Thank you very much. It's always amazing to have discussions like this.
Yeah. I hope this podcast will be helpful for a lot of people, especially for beginners, designers out there.
Wonderful. I am really happy that I could add some value.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, Himanshu. Thank you very much.
And that wraps up the very first episode of Humans and Design. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and gained some valuable insights. But we are not done yet. Sandeep will be back for another episode where we will dive even deeper. We will talk about World Economic Forum's report on jobs and UX design jobs. We'll talk about gig economy. We will talk about challenges faced by Southeast Asian nations, freelance workers, gig workers, and the exciting opportunities in India and abroad. If there's a question you would like me to ask Sandeep, please drop it in the comments. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and share your thoughts in the comments. Until then, keep designing, stay curious, take care.